Hi. Normally I like to stand here in the middle as opposed over there. Anyway, good morning. There's slides on it, isn't it?
Yeah. You want to read it?
Yeah, you want to start building healthy relationships, the Karpman drama triangle. Actually, I was Googling this, the Karpman. It was interesting because actually you're probably familiar with carp with C. And I thought that was interesting. It's a pity his name is not Karpman spelled with C, but anyway, it's that's the name of the title. And of course, this unification is the ideal of building relationships is essential. Whether you're unifications or not unifications, it's always a challenge. Go on to the next slide. So the three great blessings. I love Gemini and ChatGPT. Normally I don't do slides. I know the ideas in my head and I just get it out. But just this AI is just fantastic. It's, put out your ideas and boom, and it comes out with all this fantastic stuff. You know, it does all the work for you. So we all know the three great blessings, right? I mean, this is one of the, I think personally, it's one of my favorite inspirational parts. And this is a kind of a more of a pragmatic interpretation of it, because the three great blessings in the DP is very theological and mind body unity thing, but in the real world, this is like a real grounded example that we can all connect and relate to. This is more my own personalized one that I kind of did out, but you get the idea. I love the principles of creation. I think it's great because if you look at all the different religions, right, and there's all different things of Jesus and believe in Jesus and you're saved. But the first thing I was really impressed when I listened to the principle for the first time was just the purpose of life. And then boom, boom, boom. And it's so succinct. And it actually is kind of like self-evident. It's both brilliant and obvious at the same time. And people basically believe it and buy into it. Even if you look at science and research and modern day psychology of what makes people happy, right? It all comes up with the same idea of healthy mind, healthy body, loving relationships. The third blessing is, in the principle, is a bit all things. It's kind of a bit, you know, and you get all these, but it really talks about the practicality. You have a family, you need a house, right? Lily and Daniel, you need a roof over your head. In the sword tab, you got to do your DIY, build sheds. The reality of the all, you can interpret all things as just in a real world scenario. So all these are all the things. These are the ideals, and this is what we all aspire towards. Next slide. But of course, religion comes up with the idea of the fall of man. So you think it's pretty, you listen to the lecture, three great blessings, fantastic. Just go out there, realize the ideal, yeah? Do all your exercises, eat healthy food, which we all do because we know it's all what we're supposed to be doing. We have great relationships and harmonious interaction because that's the ideal. We go out there, we got jobs, we live these amazingly prosperous lives. Everything is wonderful, right? Because we have the principle and it's explained to us. Well, except we have fallen nature, right? And with fallen nature, from a religious perspective, you got the fall. And interesting, psychology also recognizes this issue. It depends on which perspective, whether you're looking at it from a modern day scientific, psychological perspective, or from the historic and religious perspective, there's an acknowledgement that we have, whether you call it emotional or social dysfunctionality, or whether you've got fallen nature. It's basically, the problem is, we all know, like, the beginning of the new year, we all know we should be eating healthy food and exercising. Does anybody ideologically disagree with that? No. But to be honest, we probably not great at it, right? That's just, and not because we don't believe in it or we don't want it. It's just, in reality, there's lots of different factors and different things and situations, but also it's just a reality of the fall. And that's the thing right across the board. Religion comes up with the concept of fallen nature, psychology, but one way or another, we have this issue. And I want to zoom in on the next slide. This is interesting. Karpman, I came up with this just through dealing with the different. I wanted to zoom in on the second blessing. Obviously, the second blessing is loving relationships. And this is really tough and it's challenging. Even if you know the principle, you believe in the principle, the actualization and practice of cultivating and developing loving relationships is challenging. And we all come to experience our own limitations and fallen nature. And even as you get older, and you may be practicing and believing and aspiring towards this for 20, 30 years, right? You still challenging and it's still difficult, right? Because of the fall. And the Cartman thing is really, really interesting. It's not all inclusive, but I just thought it was an interesting angle, and I just wanted to cover it in the context of original nature, the ideal, the second blessing, and the idea of fallen nature. So the Cartman thing, he basically comes up with this idea of persecutor. Now, most of us will probably fit into something like this. A persecutor, victim, and rescuer, right? Unificationists at the beginning would have a lot of rescuers because they're out there to save the world. You know what I mean? You have to have your mission to save the world. And the victim is self-evident. The persecutor is this more kind of like, you ever see this ultra right-wing religious people, you know what I mean? And they take much more of an aggressive persecutor perspective on it. And that's kind of the dynamic, right? And many of us can get into these different roles. And I want to get into them. Next slide. So this one is the victim mindset. So the first one in it is people who get into the victim mindset. Now you have to remember two things. First of all, we live in a fallen world, right? So there's fallen nature everywhere. And if you want to be a victim, you don't have to pretend to be a victim. I mean, the world is fallen, right? I guarantee you. So I'm not, when I'm going into critiquing the victim, I'm not questioning the legitimacy of victimhood, right? And not only as an individual could we be a victim, and I'm sure we all have suffered in our own lives with difficult and challenging situations. But in addition to being the victim, we also live in a world that's fallen. So we're in a whole kind of ecosystem that is a dysfunctional, fallen world. And you don't have to look far. Just look at the news and all of what's going on in the world, right? So it's very, very easy to feel it. So here's the thing. So when we talk about victimhood, here's the issues, right? The problem with victimhood is convincing oneself all attempts to change are futile. I'm talking about the victimhood mindset of just feeling powerless. I am powerless. And I'm feeling sorry for myself and I don't have any capabilities and I'm this poor victim. And this mindset is incredibly unhealthy. It doesn't solve problems, right? And if you get into it, now it's perfectly normal that we have circumstances. And the problem is, it's kind of complicated because you can get into circumstances and situations in your life where there's I'm not questioning the legitimacy of victimhood. But the problem is, if you're in this and you get stooped in this mindset of permanent depressed victimhood, this is really, really problematic. And also, you're always blaming other people, right? You're always everyone else's fault. And then if you ever talk to someone, you're always complaining and moaning. And you're just kind of like sucking the oxygen out of the room, right? And you get into this permanent state, and it's an incredibly unhealthy state. And then, of course, you just become, people try to tell you, well, you should do this or you should do that. Put. You're the expert with excuses. You got an excuse for everything. And again, we live in a fallen world, so I guarantee you, I'm not questioning the legitimacy of your excuses, right? You got an excuse for everything, and you blame other people. And the key element of victimhood, and the number one problem with victimhood, is forfeiting personal responsibility, right? You basically forfeit personal responsibility. That's the problem. Feeling like a victim in situations is not the problem. And it's probably in and of itself legitimate because we live in a fallen world. But now, obviously, we're talking about adults here. But when you forfeit responsibility and you declare yourself powerless, right? Even though the whole situation may look really, really difficult and challenging, that's the problem. Now, there are going to be certain occasions and situations. It's perfectly understandable in perfect circumstances and situations to be a victim, to be a part-time victim, right? Absolutely. I mean, you could be driving down the road, and you know, the car blows up and there's an engine problem, and you know absolutely nothing about it, then you could be powerless and you could be a victim and you could feel like, I don't know what to do, and you can phone someone up and have them do it for you. There are going to be circumstances in life, right, where there is, so it's not it. So I don't want to completely invalidate victimhood. And then you can have a horrible tragedy in your life. Like, really. I know most of us think we're all going through lots of tragedies, but there are circumstances like a loss of life. That's an absolute tragedy right there. And you can have the opposite with another personality type, which I'll talk about later. So this is victimhood, right? Next one. The rescuer. The rescuer. Classic unification is the rescuer. You might be looking at this thinking, oh, rescuer, what's wrong with this? This is good. The rescuer, the helper, encourages. The problem, the rescuer is always rescuing and saving the world and saving people, saving everybody. That's what a rescuer does, right? They're coming up with saving everybody. And in and of itself, you can say to yourself, well, what's wrong with that? That seems like a good thing. Geez, half the church is full of rescuers. Saving the world, right? Why don't we should go out there and save the world? The problem with the rescuer is there's a lot of problems. Rescuer interacts with a victim, and it enables the victim to be helpless because they're going to come in and save everything and do everything. Rescuers view people as you walk down the street and you see a bum on the street, and you're a rescuer. What are you going to do? Oh, sir, that's so politically incorrect. I can't believe I said that. You see a person who was challenged and going through difficult situations. Obviously, I'm not a friggin' rescuer. And you come out, what do you do? Well, you can feed them. You can clothe them. You can do everything for them. And the world's full of those people, right? Actually, McFerry is an institution designed to feed and clothe. Right? But that's exactly what you do, right? You feed them, and the problem with rescuing is you can give a man a fish and he feed himself for a day, but you don't teach him how to fish. So that's the problem with rescuing. It sounds, it's one of those things, it sounds like, no, so rescuing is a really good thing. Well, I mean, of course, healthy rescuing is a good thing, but the truth of the matter is, actually, all you're doing, you know, all these programs they have in Africa where they basically create all these camps and feed all these people, they all show up there and they're fed on these programs, and they're in there for 2, 3, 4 generations because they lose the ability to self-preserve. It's a huge, huge problem. Dependency, right? The welfare just keeps on growing and growing and growing. If you feed and clothe people, then they lose the ability to feed and clothe themselves. That's a reality, right? And all of this rescuing actually doesn't rescue, it creates problems. Imagine if you're a rescuer and the biggest problem with rescuing is actually rescuing 80% of the time, rescuing doesn't work. Ask all the times you spend hours and hours on the phone with certain individuals, right? And you're just constantly, and you're a rescuer, and you're trying to save them, and all the time you're talking to them for hours and hours and hours. I will challenge you and say, you know what? I bet you those individuals are still coming back looking for those 2-hour conversations, and they haven't changed, right? You're a rescuer, and it's not working. Most of the time, not all the time. It's good to be a part-time rescuer, and people need rescuing, right? Being a part-time rescuer is really healthy. And don't get me wrong, being a part-time victim is really, really healthy. You need to process and be vulnerable. And if you're not, then that's another problem you have, right? But I guarantee you, rescuing from most points, there's two factors in rescuing. One is your view of people is that they're helpless, right? And that they don't have the resources within themselves. And you're just looking at this, oh my God, we have to feed and clothe everybody because they can't feed and clothe themselves. You end up being a left-wing socialist. And statistics show the more people get fed and clothed, the more dependent they become, and then they totally become useless, and then you're confirmed. Actually, not only is rescuing in most cases ineffective, it's actually extremely harmful. Right? In particular, if you're interacting with a victim, all you're doing is empowering the victim to be a victim. You're reinforcing their victimhood and reinforcing the idea that they are helpless, which is a terrible idea for the victim. The worst thing you can do as the victim is come to the conclusion that you're powerless, because then you're totally screwed, right? How can you be happy if you won't fulfill the three great blessings believing you're powerless? And then this whole dynamic is extremely unhealthy. And I always found it interesting as unifications, because I'm not a rescuer, obviously. But
Yes.
the next slide comes by. You would try this check. This next slide is you.
Okay.
Where is it?
Never.
Yeah. So I always found as a unificationist, when you study the principle focuses on 5% portion responsibility. It's very interesting. Unificationism is very interesting compared to Christianity. Christianity empowers victimhood. And let me explain why. Jesus is your Lord and Savior. And by believing in Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, you go to heaven. They downplay the role of personal responsibility and elevate the concept of grace. And it doesn't matter how much work you do or how hard you try. You are a sinner. You have original sin. You're a sinner. But when you believe in Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, then you are saved. Right? And and you can do your research within Christianity. It's an emphasis on grace. Right? And it empowers this sense that we are powerless. Unificationism actually is really unique as a religion. Because actually, do you know as unificationists, we don't believe. Now you might think, well, I believe and follow Reverend and the true parents and go to heaven. No, that's not unificationism. You haven't read the principle. Unificationism is actually you return joy to God by fulfilling the three great blessings. And you were saved when you were in the process of fulfilling the three great blessings. So you can believe in God, you can believe in true parents, you can follow true parents. You can have phenomenal faith, right? But the principle is black and white on it. You return joy to God, it's in black and white in the DP, by fulfilling the three great blessings. And you find joy and fulfillment with yourself and to others. That's 101 DP. It's a full 100% emphasis on actual personal responsibility. Now, of course, there is an element of filial piety and connection and faith, right? But faith is in lowercase. Classic DP, 5% portion responsibility. So victimhood and victim and rescuers are kind of like, the rescuer is really responsible. They're very able type, responsible, conscientious types of people, and they're always doing stuff, which is in and of itself a good thing, right? There is a healthy version of it, but fundamentally, every individual you cannot save someone. You can guide them. They have to fulfill their own 5% portion responsibility. Now, obviously, this doesn't relate to children. Right? You can't turn around and say, well, you go feed and clothe yourself to fulfill your own 5% responsibility. It's not my job. This got nothing to do with parent-child relationship. This is adults. As adults, it's up to us. Technically, we can't go around saving anybody. We can guide and inspire, and I'll come to that later on. But just to understand it, the rescuer mindset, to define the difference between rescuer. A rescuer is someone who is quite frankly going around thinking they can solve other people's problems and not giving space for that individual to take responsibility. Now, the next one, the persecutor. This is me, I'm confession here.
I'm not there,
Yeah. That's why I hang out with James. Two persecutors coming together. The persecutor.
One nice one, one bad one.
One nice one. Persecutor. Yeah. The only problem with that theory is the able type Kane type will admit to be the kid with the Kane type because he's recognized as the other. So if you're claiming that, then you're claiming that. Busted. We'll go with Kane type. Get over it. The persecutor. The persecutor. A great persecutor comes to mind. Elon Musk. Elon Musk is a persecutor. You want to know what does the world look like with persecutors? Well, go on to Twitter. You know what I mean? It's Elon Musk is a classic persecutor. Lots of the billionaire bros out there are all persecutors.
What happened
Right?
to me?
They're not rescuers. They're not persecutors. They're all persecutors too. But that in our modern day society, Donald Trump is a classic persecutor. You know? And the problem with the persecutors is obviously really resentment. You know, the biggest challenge with being a persecutor is just anger, resentment, judgment. I mean, you see this in classic, obviously, examples, just in the media, we're all familiar with Elon Musk and Donald Trump, and you know what I mean? And they're all, and again, see, here's the thing, here's the problem with all of these types. With the persecutor, the victim, and the rescuer, remember, we live in a fallen world. We live in a fallen world, right? So the victim is legitimate because we live in a fallen world. The rescuer is legitimate. God knows the world needs to be saved. The persecutor is legitimate. We live in a totally screwed up world. Donald Trump can stand up and be critical of all kinds of shite that goes on in the world, legitimately, right? But the problem with persecutors, as I would know, as I'm guilty of, is persecution doesn't solve problems, right? And it creates a toxic environment, and it doesn't resolve issues. That's the reality, to be honest. You know what I mean? The persecutor. And you can see there's different dynamics. The critic, enforcing my way or highway, intolerance, you know, the sinning. And then there's passive, and you can be different types of persecutors. Interestingly enough, in society, okay, it's if you're a woman, it is socially acceptable for a woman to be a victim, right? Sharp is looking a little confused there. That's because you're not a victim mindset. That makes sense. If I'll come to that in a second. It takes one to know it. If you're a woman, it's socially acceptable. If you're a man, you have to be a closet victim because it's just not. Women don't like victim men. Men don't even like it. See, if you're a woman and you're a victim, you're going to have your girlfriends, and there's always going to be a bunch of girlfriends that go around and you'd all listen to each other with your problems. I mean, you got some guys mowing all the time, you listen a little bit, just, oh, shit. It's not socially acceptable, and it's not attractive. Women don't like victim men. Most women. There are some women who like to fix they're rescuers. We'll get to that later, and they'll get into this whole kind of thing. But generally speaking, if you're a man, you're out of luck. You have to be a closet victimhood. Persecutor. Now, if you're a woman, you have to be a closet persecutor. Okay, you have to be a closet persecutor. It's not socially acceptable. You can get away with it being a man, right? Women, what do you call when you look at these women who are persecutors? What do you call them?
Parents.
Yeah. It starts with a B. Bitch.
We
Bitch. Funny enough, here's the funny thing I learned from working in the corporate world, right? Here's what I noticed actually working in the, this is really, really interesting. See if this is relates to your experience, right? In the corporate world, right? Who are the first group to call out the persecutor, the female persecutor? Other women. They spot them straight away. I listen to my wife sometimes, and she works in this whole corporate environment, and the women together. Oh my god! Oh, she is a bitch. Yeah, it's true. It's true. It's really true. The man, we don't pick it up straight away. Women walk in around, they'd be able to, oh my god, yeah. That's what they're
ding,
they're
ding.
spotted straight away. It's like she was wearing a t-shirt in London. Women already have sorted it out. Way more than that even around. But okay, so persecutor, you can be a man, you can get away with it socially to a certain degree, being persecuted, being a man, it's not an unusual thing. If you're a woman and you're a persecutor, you have to be a closet persecutor, which means you got to keep it low down because it's not socially acceptable. How do you know? You may not know that you're a persecutor. I'll tell you how you know you're a persecutor. If you're a woman and you can listen to your friends, you're moaning and groaning about things, but you have a limited window. You're typically really focused, motivated, quite accomplished, very good at what you do, right? And that's a good thing. All these characteristics have good points and bad points, right? Persecutors can be really good at things, but you can be highly accomplished, highly motivated, highly focused, but you're not. You can listen to someone moan and groan, but you got a limited capacity, and after you're done, like, oh my god, right? But you're going to be low out at it. But if you're a man, you can be openly persecuted. There's no social thing on that. Do you agree with that? Persecution. Okay, let's go on to the next one. So this is the dynamic that happens in the world, right? So in those, not everybody's going to. You may not fit into one of those slots. I don't think it's a perfect one. I think it does cover a lot of people. You may fit into a persecutor, but you're not aware that you're a persecutor. But I think you may fit into one of those to a certain degree, right? But here's the dynamic that goes on in these relationships, right? The first of all, the dynamic that's made in heaven is the rescuer and the victim, right? Because rescuers seek out victims, right? Because if you're a rescuer, you're not going to talk to a persecutor. Persecutor is like, they're not interested in being rescued, right? A rescuer will seek out a victim, and a victim will seek out a rescuer. That's a marriage made in heaven or hell, depending on the situation, right? Because basically, you kind of like, for obvious reasons. But here's the problem with the rescuer-victim relationship. There's a lot of problems with this that you need to look into and be questioning, okay? First of all, if you're spending all your time trying to rescue someone, you almost emotionally transplant your feelings towards them and you get too much wrapped up in them. To the point that, quite frankly, if you're a really full-time rescuer, you almost are disconnected from your own emotional needs. And you're terrible at taking care of yourself because you're running around taking care of everyone else, right? And that is extremely unhealthy, right? Now, it's not that you should switch gears and become a narcissist, but if you're just lost in everyone else all the time, and you're not in touch with your own needs because you're too busy rescuing everyone else, what you will find over time, you're going to have a breakdown. You're going to hit a brick wall, you're going to run out of steam, and you're not going to be recharging your batteries, right? And you're so disconnected from yourself. And then also the relationships you end up with, it's almost like you become a magnet and you're just surrounded by victims who are sucking the oxygen out of the room. And that ends up being unhealthy. That ends up being a really, really unhealthy dynamic. And you have to avoid that dynamic. That's the situation, right? Now, the issue with the victim is the victim loses out as well. Because if the victim is interacting with a rescuer and the rescuer is reinforcing the idea that you are a helpless victim and you don't have capability and you don't have the ability and you are, oh my gosh, let me help you because you can't help yourself, then you end up being reinforced. And I guarantee you, if you are an adult, a grown adult, and you perceive and you have forfeited personal responsibility and you believe and see yourself as helpless, well, you're going to be one extremely unhappy person, and you will not be able to be fulfilled in life, right? The last thing you need is somebody reinforcing your victimhood, right? Because it's just extremely, that dynamic, that relationship is, now, having said that, it's complicated because being a part-time rescuer, there are going to be relationships. Of course, you could be the intimate husband and wife relationship, you know what I mean? I mean, there's going to be times where, usually it's the wife, or sometimes it can be the husband, but not if the wife's the victim, you feel sorry. Of course, you're going to come in and rescue. There's going to be occasions, and that's healthy. Don't get me wrong. Being a part-time victim and being a part-time rescuer and being a part-time persecutor is really, really healthy, right? Let me give you an example. A horrible tragedy happens in your family, and you've got this persecutor personality type. And they're not even mourning the situation because they refuse. They don't have the ability to be a part-time victim. Right? And then everyone else is like, what's wrong with you? And then they're thinking, what's wrong with you? Yeah? That's extremely unhealthy. It's very, very unhealthy. Because if you cannot be, no matter what personality type you are, if you cannot be a part-time victim, then you cannot be vulnerable. And that creates problems in relationships. And that's extremely unhealthy. And if I cannot be vulnerable, that means I can't fully understand and connect with someone else as being vulnerable. I'm good luck trying to create intimate, loving relationships. So there is positivity with victimhood. People who are victimized are usually very, very open-hearted people, warm-hearted. It's a lot easier to make a connection with and become friends with and connect with somebody who's in touch with that side of themselves. Because they're much more open, they're much more sincere, they're much more genuine, and they're not closed off. Yeah? So having that quality inside of you is really, really good. I'm not great at being the victim. That's not, I should try to work on it a little bit. I'm like, you know what I mean? Terrible at it, and then But that means I'm not sympathetic. I'm listen, I'm putting my hands up here. I'm not like, look, you're a loser. Of course you're a loser because you're a complete idiot. Like, what do you think? Like, get your act together. You know what I mean? Exactly. No, I do. I put my hands up, Now, being compassionate and considerate is, and then of course, victims are going to run a mile, which is good because persecutors do not want to. Persecutors and victims, that's a toxic relationship. Generally speaking, persecutors and victims will run from each other. Right? Victims, they'll sniff out the rescuers, right? And hang out with them. They'll hang out with their fellow victims because they're lovely, sit down and don't feel sorry for each other. Right? But a persecutor, my God, run. Run. But don't worry, persecutors have no interest in victims either. That relationship is, it's not a great relationship. And it's but then there's a problem because obviously, the persecutor is a dysfunctional person. Because if you don't have the ability to be compassionate and considerate and be much more, that's a huge problem. It's a huge problem in relationships, period. Right? And you're just going to have it. You could be right in your head, and no, not all persecutors. There are competent persecutors, so you can be really competent. You've got your act together. You make things happen in life. You can get away with that, right? Especially if you're a man, you can be a highly competent persecutor. You kind of can get away with that, right? Now, but you can be an incompetent persecutor as well. You can just be one of these super angry, resentful people, and they're always critical and cynical of everyone else. But actually, they can't tie their own shoelaces either. But don't tell them that. You know what I mean? And that's a bigger problem. Like Elon Musk. The guy's a genius, but he's a persecutor. And if you're a man and you're really talented and a persecutor, you can get away with it. You can't get away with it. People give you slack. So here's other interesting relationships: rescuer, persecutor. My wife and my wife was, when we got matched first, right? She was a rescuer, a mother figure. And she lost herself in saving, the Messiahs on the earth. In the 1990s, the Messiahs on the earth, people got to be saved, right? And she was a full-time, bona fide rescuer, gotta save the world, mother figure in witnessing, you know what I mean, and all of this kind of taking care of everybody. She was 100% rescuer. And we got matched and blessed for the first time. And she shows up. She has her first aid kit, her life jackets, all the savior equipment and everything, right? And comes in here, puts everything down. This is it. Whatever problem, I've got the solution for it. I'm a rescuer. And I'm looking at her like, what's all this? Because I'm a persecutor, no victimhood whatsoever, right? Problem solution. And I'm like, what's all this stuff? Rescue. And my wife, at the beginning, we talked about this, right? She's trying to rescue me because that's what she does. And I'm like, rescuing? I don't like rescuing. I don't want rescuing. And I don't even respect people who need rescue. And then we have to kind of work out our relationship and their dynamic. You see what I'm saying? Now, actually, thankfully, she's a rescuer and I'm a persecutor. Those relationships can work. I mean, a persecutor and a victim is really, oh my God, that's toxic for everybody, right? Rescuers and persecutors can go well because rescuers basically rescue, they're usually reasonably responsible. So it doesn't provoke the response, it doesn't provoke the fallen nature of a persecutor because they're competent people, they're capable. Rescuers are competent, capable, they want to save the world. And the persecutors don't get angry at them as much. So that's kind of like, that relationship can actually, so as a persecutor, she's a rescuer. Now in the end, she stopped being a rescuer because I wasn't interested in being rescued. But she's hyper responsible and you know what I mean. So that relationship, so if you're in a relationship, that can work initially. At the end of the day, we all have fallen nature. I know you hear about it in the lecture, but trust me, we all have fallen nature. And in relationships, our fallen nature comes out. That's just the reality, right? And maybe you'll overcome your fallen nature to get older. I don't know. I'm still working on it.
Mine's gone.
Yeah, you're about a long time. Persecutor relationship. Victims will always gravitate towards victims and persecutors. That's a really horrible relationship. If you're in a matching process in a blessing and you're in a persecutor victim relationship, that's really toxic. Right? That's really bad for everybody. Bad for the victim gets reinforced. Because then you get this persecutor, and then you're justified in being the victim, right? And then it's just a real toxic relationship. So it's pretty good that victims and persecutors avoid each other. And this is the dynamic that goes on in all relationships. But having said that, like I say, it's really, really important that we kind of know. Now, for some of you may not connect with this, you may not be able to put yourself in that or may see that dynamic in a relationship. But if you're a woman, okay, and you're a victim, get yourself a rescuer and run from a persecutor. It's not going to go well, right? If you're a woman and you're a persecutor, now how do you know if you're a woman and you're a persecutor? You're not great, because you're a woman, it's difficult. Women have empathy and they kind of, but you're not great at comforting your friends who are in a tragedy. You kind of do it, and afterwards, oh my God, I need a break from that. You kind of move on. You know that kind of talk? So you're kind of like, you have a certain empathy, and then, okay, enough. That's my weeks of empathy done, I need to, and you're very much focused on being driven and motivated, and you're a driven, motivated person, and that's your character, just obviously stay away from an incompetent man, right? Just run from an incompetent man. Who needs rescuing. Trust me. You're gonna, and then you might think, "Ah, I can fix him." Okay, that idea in a woman's head, just blow your head off right now. You can't fix it. Most of the time, you will not fix them. No. This is a classic. Women feel like, I want to fix this guy. I'm gonna fix him. Sometimes it actually works. No, it does. Sometimes it does work, and there are relationships in certain ways, but in most cases, it doesn't work. I would argue 80% of rescuers are wasting their time. They're just not being productive, right? So if you're a persecutor, well, get yourself a competent, capable man. Okay, don't go for some guy you need to fix because you're going to persecute the hell out of him. You're gonna hate him, right? It's not a combination. Get yourself a rescuer. A rescuer is good. You know, you can get yourself another persecutor. That could work out. Just stay away from that incompetence. Okay? And there's all kinds of different dynamics, but you can obviously reflect on it in your own relationships and your own lives and what's going on. I think it's really fascinating. Next slide. So let's start with the positive. Wrap up with the positive. So this is all the kind of negatives, the fallen nature, the unhealthy relationships that we're all involved in. I have fallen nature. My fallen nature comes out of my relationships, and I have to look at it. I have to confront myself. It's very, very easy for a persecutor to feel self-righteous and justified. I'm right because the world's so screwed up. I am not questioning the legitimacy of a persecutor. I am not questioning, be very, very clear with this. I am not questioning, if you're a victim, I am not questioning the legitimacy of victim. The world is a fallen world. If you're a rescuer, you're going to argue, now hang on a second, the world needs rescuing. I'm not arguing about the legitimacy that the world needs rescuing. So what's the critique? The critique is being a victim, being a persecutor, being a rescuer is ineffective. And it doesn't work. Right? For all the different reasons. Just because you know what the right thing is, going around persecuting just creates toxic and destructive. Proclaiming yourself a victim and being helpless, you've already lost from the starting point. And running around thinking you're going to save the world and rescue it, I guarantee you 80% of the time you're wasting your time. Right? So, what is the idea? What's the healthy solution? And where should we all move towards? Right. Being a victim, one of the great things about being is victims are really vulnerable, they're very open, they're very honest, they're really typically very lovable people, the kind of people you can get to know, love, and connect with and appreciate. And they have excellent empathy. And they can really be very compassionate, and they can really connect with and show great concern and compassion for others. And they have many, artistically, they're quite popular people. They're very artistic, really friendly, very, very lovable people. So you can hold on to the good side of that characteristic, be caring, compassionate, considerate, empathy, but take personal responsibility, right? Take ownership. You are not helpless. Take ownership, right? Be responsible. You have the power inside of you, and you are not a powerless, incompetent kid. That's completely right. And that's and then if you're in a loving relationship with a rescuer, okay, the problem is if you're the victim and the rescuer is rescuing you all the time, the rescuer is out of touch with their needs, you're sucking all the oxygen out of the room, and that relationship long term is going to be extremely unhealthy. In the ideal scenario, the victim is vulnerable, open, but takes ownership. And the rescuer, the next thing is the rescuer, you care about the world, you want to save the world, you want to make an impact on the world. That's all a beautiful thing. You shouldn't change that, right? The question is, how do you rescue and how do you save the world? Right? Well, the answer to that is you do it by example. Right? If you want to teach people proactively, you become a mentor and a coach. So switch from being a rescuer and be a mentor and a coach. But remember, there's conditions to being a mentor and a coach. If I'm sitting down giving you instructions as a coach, what does the coach want? You need to be reciprocal to that. Right? I sit down, you got a problem, I give you advice. You take that advice. Now, if you don't agree with the advice, there can be a healthy dialogue, but I'm expecting if it's good advice and it works, you take that advice and you act on it. And if you don't, stop rescuing. Don't be a rescuer, be a coach, be a mentor. And give instructions, expect them to be compliant on that. And if they're not, sometimes persecutors can be great mentors because I'm a persecutor and I'm not into the whole, like I've got my own kids, I'll give them advice. I expect them to act on, I expect them to be successful and happy and everything's going to be fine. And if they're not, well, failure is an opportunity to learn. The classic thing, right? So I'm not gravitating towards this rescue. Oh, my teacher's really terrible, I'm really struggling. Wow. And what are you going to do about it? So you're going to have to, what's your plan? The teacher's a loser. The world's full of losers. Get used to it. What's your plan of action? So my kids are all used to that too.
The very warm man.
Exactly. No compassion. But now, thankfully, God made me a beautiful mom who's filled with compassion and love. So they want a hug.
The balance is there.
They want a hug. They know who to go to. But no, be a rescuer. Absolutely. You want to save the world. That's a great thing. Be responsible. Live the sacred community. Go beyond yourself. But remember, be a mentor. Be a coach. And expect these people, to respond. You give them if they got a problem and you listen to them, you say, okay, here's the solution. I expect this person to do it. If they don't do it, now, as persecutors, Shark is there nodding because as persecutors, we don't have that problem, right? We don't have that problem. We give them their advice. Hey, I'll give them my advice. That's it. I'm out of here. It's your problem. Come on. Rescuers, the problem with the rescuers, I'm looking at Eli here. The problem with the rescuers is they're just all the time overly stuck in the line of not being able to cut the line, right? And then when the person does it, they make excuses for them. Oh, but it's not so easy. Persecutors have no sympathy. Yeah, you have problems because you're a complete loser. You're an idiot. And your life is a manifestation of your idiocy. So get your act together, right? That's the persecutors. Okay, so rescuer, persecutor, assertive, expressive. Again, the big problem as a persecutor is persecution. It's a huge problem. Lacking compassion, lacking empathy. It's a big problem. My biggest problem is just getting consumed by really being so angry and frustrated. To me, I look at my view of the world as pretty simple. 3 great blessings. Get your act together. Make it happen. What is your problem? I don't understand. But of course, in the real world, it doesn't work like that. And I lack compassion. I'm not sympathetic. And I'm not compassionate. And that's a huge, huge problem. It's a huge problem. It's a huge problem for me, and it's a huge problem for the object of my lack of compassion. It's incredibly problem. And as a persecutor, again, you're not going to have it. So that's what I'm saying. A persecutor needs to become a part-time victim. Because a victim is not just a negative thing. It's also positive. It gives you the ability to be compassionate, to be considerate, to be engaging. Right? And ideally, actually, if you got all of these blended together, right? And you kind of became the blended together. What's the blended together look like? You are a compassionate mentor. Ultimately, I believe we should all aspire to being compassionate mentors, right? Because compassion is important. And you're going to mentor, and not everyone is going to be able to get it and respond. So you need that compassion, right? If you're just a mentor and you expect click, click, click. It doesn't happen. It's just a reality. People do have fallen nature and limitations. So if we combine mentorship with compassion and become that kind of, we all actually, all our personality, now I know it's easier said than done, but really blending that in, you know? Now, as I'm sitting here giving this lecture, I mean, you know, I'm not a spring chicken and I'm still working on, I'm compassionate, just, it's a hard thing to do, you know? It's tough. And if you're a victim, you're going to be addicted to negativity. And telling you, you're never going to get it. So if you're a persecutor, you're probably going to be persecuted your whole life. But at least if you're in awareness of it and it's a problem, it'll help you. Don't try to justify your persecution. If you're a self-justified persecutor, you're really in trouble. It's not self-justified. I'm wrong, and I'm in awareness of it, and I should make an effort. Right? If you're a victim, you're going to be a victim your whole life. Addiction to negativity is really, really powerful. That's fine. Just be aware of it, right? And just try to keep it in balance somehow. And try to be empowering and tell yourself, I've got this, I can do this, I have the power, I have the ability, and just encourage and support yourself to try to be it. And if you're a rescuer, you know, really understand that all you're doing is suppressing your own needs, and you're going to run out of, you hit the brick wall, and just going around trying to rescue the world. I guarantee you, you could be 20, 30 years rescuing, and after a while you realize, I've been wasting my time. And it's not that you're wasting your time, you're just not being doing it in the most effective way. Be a mentor. Be a mentor. And put all of your energy going into rescuing, put some of that energy into yourself, not from a selfish perspective, because the rescuer wants to live for the sake of others, but from a if I actualize the three great blessings in my life and put time and energy into that and take care of myself, then I can be a role model and an example and an inspiration to others. I would personally argue, and I've always argued with my wife because she's a rescuer, and I'm totally against rescue. That was a waste of time. And I'd always argue but having said that, serving and the community is essential, right? You don't just have to be a rescuer to serve the community. But we'd have this argument, and I'd say, listen, if you put your time and energy into living your own, you know, actualizing three great blessings, to being a source of example, right, of having a good marriage and being responsible and raising up children and doing all the things you're supposed to do, then you can act as a model. And then people can look at that and be inspired, right? Because if you're looking around and it's just a car wreck outside, everything's just a disaster, then you're feeling hopeless. But if somebody has their act together and they're showing it as an example, so I would say to all you rescuers, that's the best way to do it. Be the example, right? Put some of the energy, instead of suffocating, just being a rescuer all the time and running out of, just being exhausted, just put the time and energy into actualizing your own ability, not just for yourself, but for the sake of showing a role model example and inspiring others. So we're all dysfunctional. We all have dysfunctions. If you're listening to this and you felt uncomfortable, maybe you didn't, then if you felt uncomfortable or I was talking about you, yeah, I was talking about you, me, and everyone. Every one of us are dysfunctional. It's called fallen nature. It's 101. I don't know. That's the defined principle say. We have fallen nature. We're born with it. I mean, we may be blessed or forgiven with this, that, and the other. The fallen nature is still there. Okay? So I have fallen nature. You have fallen nature. We all have fallen nature. And it's up to each individual, obviously, to look at that. So hopefully you got something out of it. Hopefully you did. I just thought it was an interesting, different angle. I just thought it take a little bit of a different angle to kind of think outside. So please join me in prayer. Dearest Heavenly Father, we're really grateful that we could come here together and gather as a community, and it's such you know, in so many ways, when we look at the whole world out there that's so polarized, and actually the epidemic of loneliness that's existing in the modern world, having a community of people coming together on shared values and aspiring towards these values as a community is such an incredible blessing. And maybe we don't really appreciate it or understand it enough. And of course, in a community, we have different feelings and we struggle with each other and we've got difficulties with each other. And, we have our own fallen nature and our own demons. And that's unfortunate that it comes in conflicts. But beyond the conflicts and difficulties and challenges, the fact that we have a community and a shared community that we can come together is a great blessing. And, I really want to thank you and thank our two parents for this incredible blessing that especially in this age. I also want to take time to pray for Dr. John Moon, the great tragedy of just imprisoning a woman of her age, pure and utter political persecution and vindictiveness that's happening in Korea, and such a tragic it's such a tragic outcome. I mean, you live as a religious community seeking to serve. The two parents have served and to Korea and served the world, and what you get in return is to be locked away, treated like a criminal is such an incredible tragedy. And there really our thoughts and our feelings are with our true mother. We just hope that God's will prevails and that you're there to protect her and protect our community, and our church is also being under attack, and all of the great injustices that are happening. And I pray that we can really collectively come together as a community and take the blessings that we have and really aspire and continually move forward to being mature, loving, mentoring, compassionate people, and always seeking to do that. I'd like to pray this now in the name of Al McCann, Set the Blessed Family. Adieu.